Imagine you're playing this game, black plays the move knight to h4, and you are presented now with three doors: a red door, a yellow door, and a blue door. And on each door is a chess move. One of them leads to victory, and the other two lead to defeat. On the first red door is knight to h3, check. On the second yellow door is g3, check. And on the third blue door is knight to e2, check. Like I said, only one door leads to victory, the other two lead to defeat. I'd like you to pause the video and try to figure out which door should you choose for victory. Good luck. Well, if you had a chance to look at that, let's talk about the doors one at a time, starting with the red door. So the move knight to h3, check to black's king, actually looks pretty appealing because when you look carefully, there's not a lot of places that the black king can move to. Actually, it has to go to g4. Now we have a couple of options. One logical choice might be the move f3 check, getting a fork. The problem here is that black can simply capture this with the knight, and when you take back, they can really take your pawn, or even better, capture your knight. And yes, you can take the bishop, but after they take here, you're not able to catch this pawn. It's going to be much faster than your pawn, and black is going to simply win the game very easily. So that doesn't quite cut it. Instead of going for the fork here on f3, though, maybe we say, well, we'll take this with our knight. We're attacking a lot of different pawns. Maybe we have a chance here. But the reality is, after bishop takes g2, black's extra piece, along with some extra pawns, it's just too much. There's really not much you can do here as white. Yes, you can grab a pawn, but black's going to continue knight to f3, hunting your pawns, and there's no way you're going to survive this very long as white. So unfortunately, the move knight to h3 check just doesn't quite cut it. Let's move on to the yellow door and the move g3 check. Now, this move also looks pretty appealing, primarily because it's a fork, but also, again, the king doesn't have a lot of good options. You can't go back here because of our king. You can't come up because of the knight and the pawn. And again, the king is forced to g4. And here we have, again, quite a few interesting options. Number one, we could just take the knight and see what happens there. The problem with this is that black's going to recapture. The bishop is in a very nice position. It's much stronger than the knight, which doesn't have a lot of options. And black's king is better, and start hunting these pawns if we ever move our knight. And there's really not a lot of good options here for us as white. And so because of that, taking the knight isn't going to cut it. The other move here is h3 check, which looks pretty nice because black's king, again, is forced to go here. But the problem is that after g4 check, king goes back to h6. We don't have a good follow-up. We have no way to get our knight over there to deliver the checkmate. And unfortunately, this is just a winning position for black. So that didn't cut it either. So now it's time for me to reveal that the only correct door, and the one that led to victory, was the blue door and the move knight to e2 check. So congratulations for those of you who picked the blue door, but now let's see if we can understand why and how does this move lead to victory. So it's check to black's king. We've seen this before. Only spot is for the king to go to g4, but now I'd like you to pause again. And what's the follow-up here to finish off the game? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is h3 check. And we've kind of seen this idea before as well, attacking the king and forcing it back to h5. And then again, g4 check. But again, we see the king escaping to h6. And now you might be wondering, okay, how do we proceed from here? Because it looks, again, like black is pretty safe. But actually, this time, we have a trick. White to play and win. If you had a chance to look at that, the move is f4, and what white is trying to do here is simply capture this pawn with checkmate. So if black simply does a random move, we take this, the game is over. But of course, black's not going to do that. What are they going to do? Well, they could try to capture us, but you should be able to see the problem with that pretty quickly. What can we play here? You had a chance to look at that. It's g5 check, forces the king here, and notice our knight is perfectly positioned now to capture on f4 and deliver the checkmate. That's great, except black is a little bit too smart for that. And rather than capturing, and rather than wasting a move, they play the very clever move knight to f3. And what they're doing by playing knight to f3 is actually adding a defender to that pawn so that when we capture, they can recapture with the knight. So in this case, what should we play now as white? If you had a chance to look at that, there's two moves here, but only one of them is actually the best. Now, knight to d4 is a good try. It's a good try because what you're hoping for is that black will capture you and allow the checkmate. Unfortunately, black has the reply of simply capturing, and the game can still continue. Knight to c6 is a tricky move here, trying to kind of loop around the back to deliver checkmate that way, but it looks like black can survive after knight to e5, and if you did try to go for this, black has knight to d7 check, which forces your king out of the position, and now black's going to win. Okay, so knight to d4, not a bad try, but the correct move here is actually capturing the pawn with check, forcing the knight to recapture, and now white has a way to win the game. See if you can find it. If you had a chance to look at that, the move is h4. And what we're doing is setting up the same thing that we saw previously. We were trying to go for this g5 check idea, but you might notice a little bit of a problem here after black plays knight to f3. What's the problem? You had a chance to look at that. The problem is if we play g5, the king just runs away because nothing stops it from going to h5, and it's not checkmate anymore. So what do we have to do instead? We have to control that square with the move knight to g3. Actually, knight to g3 or knight to f4 would both work. And once you control that square, now g5 is actually an unstoppable threat. Even if the knight takes here, it doesn't matter. We still play g5 with this beautiful checkmate here. Look at this. This is amazing. And if black does anything else, let's just say they push a random pawn, we still go g5. And yes, they can sacrifice. But again, we get this incredible checkmate here with the pawn. Now, I have to ask you guys, how many of you from the very beginning position here after knight to h4 thought that there was a forced checkmate in 9 moves? Pretty incredible, right? The knight and the pawns actually can force a checkmate from this seemingly normal-looking position. I don't think I would have ever thought about there being a forced checkmate. So congratulations for those of you who chose the blue door. Let me know if you like this kind of video, if you had fun, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.